All right, YouTube. This is Detroit's HPTV coming to you out of Detroit, back with another video on this Thursday morning. Now, this is going to be the most disturbing story that you're gonna hear, probably in a while, because people not talking about it. How many of you guys know that the Supreme Court are voting on gender reassignment for children, even toddlers, all the way toddlers at 2 years old? Babies being considered gender fluid at birth, and this in front of the Supreme Court. Now, do you remember Joe Biden's pick, the first black justice of the Supreme Court, Ketanji B Jackson, the one who was asked by Congress to define what a woman was, and she couldn't define what a woman was, even though she's a woman? Wait till you hear what she says. She compares the denial of gender reassignment for children to the denial of interracial marriages back in the 60s. Yeah, that comparison. Now, a lot of people in the black community, they criticize Clarence Thomas, called him all kind of names, a Tom, a bootlick, because he was conservative. But you have this black lady who's been voted to be on the Supreme Court as the first black woman on the United States Supreme Court who cannot identify what a woman really is. And then she compares gender reassignment for children being denied on the same level as not allowing interracial marriages. You can't make this up. This is crazy. And the people not reporting on it. In this Biden administration, they had so many things that they were doing behind the scenes, hoping Kamala Harris would win, that a lot of people didn't know. They were actually passing laws and voting in the Supreme Court for gender reassignment for 2-year-olds. 2-year-olds who are identifying as the other gender. How can that be? This story is very disturbing, and I want you to see it. We're going to get off into it, and I want you to share this video so other people can see this case, because it's going on right now. So without further ado, let's get off into it. This is for fair use in the 1976 Copyright Act, for education and commentary. And I'm standing on the First Amendment. Listen to this.
Now turning to this, you're looking live at the United States Supreme Court, and right now as we speak, oral arguments are underway in a case that could reshape national regulations on gender treatments for children. The case surrounds an equal protection challenge to Tennessee's ban on different types of gender treatment for minors. 25 states have bans that could be affected, and it will be the first time that the High Court will consider restrictions on puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and surgery, life-altering surgery for children. The court's decision could also have broader implications for...
How many of you guys knew that they were trying to pass a bill that allowed children, minors under elementary school age, to have life-altering surgery, to have their genitalia removed, that they were giving them puberty blockers? You have to be honest. This is diabolical. This is sinister. This is so nefarious. It has to be satanic. And that's what they had on the back burner for us on the left. Listen to some more.
Transgender people, including access to restrooms and participation in school sports. But first, let's bring in Justice correspondent David Scott for more details. David.
Hi, Kaylee. Oral arguments have been underway since 10 o'clock this morning. Shows you how contentious this case is. As you mentioned, the first time the justices have weighed in directly on this controversial issue. The case originates out of Tennessee, involves the treatment like puberty blockers and other hormone therapies. This specific state law bans medical care for transgender adolescents, one of about 24 states with similar measures. In 2023, Donald Trump's campaign promised to ban treatment.
I have to stop right there. Did you hear what he said? Transgender adolescents. Wow.
for adolescents nationally, while banning Medicare and Medicaid insurance coverage for such care. Groups for and against the law are outside the Supreme Court. They've been outside the Supreme Court for several hours because, Kaylee, this case will have implications that extend far past the Tennessee borders. This will have a broad effect in all 50 states and go past the walls of a medical facility. Think transgender protections in sports and access to bathrooms. Here's Chloe Cole, an activist against some of this care, who detransitioned. Watch.
To allow them to make a decision that will affect not only the entire course of their development physically, psychologically, and reproductively is completely ridiculous. And it's okay to allow your child to experience this discomfort because it's normal to experience discomfort at the time that you're going through puberty. Everybody goes through it.
LGBTQ groups have eyes on President Biden in his final weeks in office to see maybe he'll issue some sort of executive order or blanket protection that does not involve what's a fractured Congress right now in Washington. The White House has touted his work with the LGBT community in the past, but many are worried as the Trump administration is coming to town on this issue. We expect a decision from the Supreme Court like.
Are y'all hearing this? Are y'all hearing this? Why aren't the mainstream news medias blowing this up? They are actually trying to pass laws that will allow the gender reassignment of toddlers, surgeries for adolescents. And y'all guys thought it was just about sharing bathrooms. See, that was the gateway. This society was moving toward a genderless society, so fluid that you can't tell men from women and women from men. All kind of pronouns. This is where they were taking this country. This is where they still are trying to take this country. Why they flooded with immigrants. Listen to some more of the story.
Later in the spring, when Trump is well underway in office. Back to you.
David, thank you.
Thank you.
I listened to these oral arguments. You have highly competent attorneys. Talk about sharp. You have to be to argue in front of the Supreme Court. I listened to Justice Roberts, Thomas, among others. Definitely the conservative wing of the court seems to be expressing some skepticism of the arguments being made on behalf of transgender surgeries for minors. I do want to rewind to just before these oral arguments. The ACLU attorney who's arguing the case was on CNN and had a statement that I would call eyebrow raising when you do the math. Listen to this.
These are young people who may have known since they were 2 years old exactly who they are, who suffered for 6-7 years before they had any relief. And what's happening here, it's not the kids who are consenting to.
Now listen, that is a transgender man that was a woman saying that these children have knew that they were of a different gender ever since they was 2 years old. That individual there is a lawyer and an advocate and is pushing this agenda. Now, think about this. A child can't even get a tattoo, but a child will be allowed to have gender reassignment surgery based on what they're saying. And again, this lady, Ketanji Jackson, the first Black woman nominated to the Supreme Court, who cannot tell you what a woman is and compares gender reassignment, prohibiting gender reassignment for children, equivalent to not allowing interracial marriage. This is insane. And Joe Biden appointed her, and people, they were so cheerful that they had a Black woman on the Supreme Court. Can you not tell that this woman is a plant? This woman is a part of a nefarious, Luciferian agenda that's anti-God, anti-country, anti-family. Everything about what she's done since she's been on the Supreme Court indicates that. And Joe Biden, not only, people's in an uproar about him pardoning Hunter. That's the small thing. Then he allowed them to fire the missiles into Russia from Ukraine. But look what else they had on the floor. These Democrats were 100% wicked. We dodged a bullet here.
this treatment. It's the parents who are consenting to the treatment. And as a parent, I would say when our children are suffering, we are suffering.
So let's do some math. 2-year-olds who know they want to change their gender. I have had 2-year-olds. I don't know how a 2-year-old knows that. And then you add 6 years that they've been struggling. That was advocacy for 8-year-olds having life-altering surgery. And let's pull up the Washington Post KFF poll on this matter. You find 68% of U.S. adults do not think those 10 to 14-year-olds should be able to get this life-altering treatment. I wonder how the nation feels if you change that to, let's say, 8-year-old, Tammy.
Yes, and this is the problem. Most of us, if you know children, and the tendency here, and I've been arguing against this for years, is for the gay community and other adults who have some sexual issues or sexual frameworks they're dealing with, is to not project it onto children to justify the choices that we are making as adults. And this is what this has been from the beginning. My concern about the Supreme Court goes back to 2020 with the Bostick versus Clayton County decision. And Justice Gorsuch noted, and it was 6-3 regarding discrimination against workplaces, which said, yes, sexual identity or transgenders fit into that framework. His framework was, he used the phrase, if an employer penalizes a person identified as male at birth for traits or actions that it tolerates in an employee identified as female at birth. Now, that is political language taken from the left. It is not scientific. It was using this framework that someone at birth is identifying that baby as one thing or another, meaning that it is fluid. And this is my concern when you're dealing with 2-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, of the assigning or identifying as opposed to it existing through scientific reality.
Are y'all listening to what she's saying? Somebody is identifying the child for the child. Someone is actually stepping in and saying that this child should be another gender at birth and as toddlers.
So my concern is, and they're using this case here to say that this is a legitimate aspect regarding small children, little kids, 2-year-olds, etc. And we should not. It is it's an ideology. It is political, and children should not be thrown into that volcano.
I want to note that oral arguments just wrapped. So that was about 2 hours and 30 minutes on the needle. About, if my mind serves me correctly, Roe v. Wade, the arguments there and the Dobbs decision ran about that long. So they have just wrapped. And Emily, I want to bring up a point that I think is very, very, very important. I believe science matters. I believe facts matter. Europe has followed the science on this issue. United States, we've been wrapped around political arguments. So I want to bring in some of the science. This is International Review of Psychiatry. Listen to this closely. The conclusion from studies that have been conducted is that children with gender dysphoria strongly associated later in life with a lesbian, gay, or bisexual outcome. In the majority of children, 85.2%, the gender dysphoric feelings remitted around or about puberty. In other words, 85% of kids who thought they had gender dysphoria and wanted to change their gender ended up not. 85% around puberty. I want to make this personal. As someone who has had a bilateral mastectomy, because I have a high risk of cancer, it is a life-altering surgery. You cannot reverse it. Removing your ovaries, Chloe Cole made this point, no 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old should go through menopause at that age. Why are we doing life-altering procedures?
Are you hearing this? Removing ovaries from 5-year-olds, 5-year-old children going through menopause. These are these Democrats. This is the left. These are the people who didn't want to eat Thanksgiving with you. These are the Joy Reids, the Roland Martins, the D.L. Hugleys, the Angela Ryes. These are your advocates. These are your Boule Shields. This is the left. This is what they had in store. This is what they're planning for your children.
On 85% of children who may change their mind.
And why are states stepping in loco parentis and acting
as
parents to those who are...
Even though they're arguing in the Supreme Court and we're hearing this, let's say allegedly. Everything is allegedly on YouTube because they're censoring and shadow banning. That's why it's important for you to like the video and share the video. We see that on the left, the truth is unacceptable You know what I mean? If it goes against their narrative. So you have to say, this is allegedly. But we know that the Supreme Court is having this debate and this discussion. We know they're passing these laws. We know that they're arguing about bathrooms in Congress. We know what's going on in this country, and we know who's behind it.
Seeking sanctuary with that decision from a parent that seeks only to protect the children's biological body. It is absolutely aberrant. I want to make this point for viewers that the current administration's Department of Justice filed a brief in this case. Out of nowhere, they decided to join in. And I just want to make sure everyone understands that it is the current administration's Department of Justice that seeks to weigh in and support the mutilation and the butchering irreversibly of these children. And that
now, this is the same Department of Justice that's been prosecuting Trump. This is the same corrupt Department of Justice that's been raiding homes. Like, think about what you're seeing and witnessing coming from the left. And they wanted to put the cosplaying chameleon at the helm of this debaucherous party.
January 20th cannot come fast enough, because with the new administration they will seek to restore not only law and order, but also the foundation of biology in the protection of the family unit, the protection of children's whims. Because absolutely what children explore and feel and think are all over the spectrum. And if we can't trust the kids to vote, to drive, to do things, obviously we don't, to smoke, why do we think we can trust them with an irreversible biological butchering, to say the least? But this is Biden's DOJ that just weighed in on this case.
Yeah, and I want to bring in, yes, I want to bring in Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. She drew a questionable comparison between children having life-altering surgery and interracial marriage. Listen to this.
What? God. Well, and the thing I thought what was most interesting about the potential comparison to Loving is that in that case, everyone seemed to concede up front that a racial classification was being drawn by the statute. That was sort of like the starting point. The question was whether it was discriminatory because it applied to both races and it wasn't, necessarily invidious or whatever. But, as I read the statute here, the case here, the court starts off by saying that Virginia is now one of 16 states which prohibit and punish marriages on the basis of racial classifications. And when you look at the structure of that law, it looks in terms of, you can't do something that is inconsistent with your own characteristics. It's sort of the same thing. So it's interesting to me that we now have this different argument, and I wonder whether Virginia could have gotten away with what they did here by just making a classification argument the way that Tennessee is in this case.
Harris, Ketanji Brown Jackson is a brilliant, brilliant jurist. However, I have heard members of The View or other media outlets make arguments that somehow interracial marriage is compromised because of a reversal in Roe v. Wade. It seems to me a huge stretch and a leap.
Well, if you're talking about protecting children who literally cannot make medical decisions, as Emily pointed out, there are a whole lot of decisions we don't give them the wheel for. That is one of them. If your goal is to protect children, then that's separate. I'm in a biracial marriage. I'm in an ecumenical marriage. If we're protecting children, how is that going to jeopardize me and Tony?
Right.
If you're telling me that children are at hand here, puberty blockers, by the way, one of the number one drugs is meant to treat prostate cancer. Can you imagine if you put that in a little one's body? Dr. Siegel has said it makes your bones brittle. It stops you from growing the right way. We don't know what it does to the brain yet. It can't possibly help mental health. We've seen a suppressed report that's part of this whole case as well about the effects of puberty blockers. I mean, the goal is to protect the kids, but I'm going to take this in a place that I know I'll get criticism from. I don't care. This is about spirituality as well. When we are born, God decides who we are. You get XX, you get XY. And if you want gender fluidity, it's got to come at a time when you can actually understand and express it. And I'm here to tell you a 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old can't do that. So why in the world are we messing with God's creation at that point? Jenny?
Good point. To the statement made earlier about the 2-year-old needing an advocate. If your 2-year-old is trans or trapped in the wrong body, it's because you've convinced them they are. Okay. Correct. As a parent of one child, I can tell you If you're blessed with the gift of a child, you've taken a MacBook Air out of the packing peanuts, and you're responsible for the direction it takes in life. All right.
Yeah, I mean, my 2-year-old doesn't know what he wants to eat for dinner. He throws it on the floor. He's hardly qualified to decide to change his gender.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my
Wow. What do y'all think about that? That they're actually trying to gender reassign toddlers, 2 years old, allowing them to have surgeries by 8. And they're making it in laws so that they're taking the rights from the parents because the parents are gender affirming to their children. You mean to tell me that you think this is just merely politics? You don't see a satanic influence? You don't see how diabolical this is? An 8-year-old having surgery? This is what they had in store for you on the left. You guys need to read Ephesians 6:11. You got to put on the whole armor of God around these people because we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. This is spiritual wickedness that we're seeing. We know that they're shadow banning these type of videos and they don't want you to really know what's going on. But like and share this video and get in the comments and tell me what you think. This Detroit's HPTV coming to you out of Detroit. Support the nonprofit Detroit's Black Thought and Action Collective. As always, salute all patriots and keep your head on a swivel. Peace.